Hey, Nemesis of Eden, good to see you. I don't normally break the silence before the show, but since it's you, hope you're well as well. Hope you stick around. We got a great, packed discussion tonight. Tonight, we bring you a show packed full of very special announcements, as well as discussions on Loki, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Wars Andor, and For All Mankind. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. And welcome back once again to your Tuesday night home for some of the best pop culture discussion on YouTube and really just across the entire internet. Let's be real, people. I am, of course, your host, Petey York, joined by my co-host, Mr. Pollo Zapatos.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Mr. Skogly Yoten. And, of course, Mr. Corione, Witch in Residence. And, of course, following up my enthusiasm, Mr. Nemesis of Eden in the chat saying, damn good intro. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. That's part of what I realized, probably why our show energy just has been is, because I forgot. You got to start the show with good energy and just positive and upbeat, like, yeah, we're going to talk about TV shows, guys. That shouldn't be boring. It's got to be exciting.
And dare I say, Nemesis of Eden, damn good fan.
Yes, one of the best fans. I'm very glad that he's here. And of course, Orville Nation, good to see you as well. And Daniel Larson, also one of our newest and but definitely more dedicated fans since he's here all the time with discussion, says, I'm so excited to talk about how Quark evaded the TVA to help Lutherian start the rebellion. Wait.
Perfect.
So somebody watched all the shows at the same time and just pieced together his own show. That's awesome. And Agent DBK popping in with a hello. Good to see you as well.
Agent DBK, awesome.
Yes. But before we get into even pop culture news, Corione, you have a very, very special announcement, so I'm actually going to take the spotlight off me for a second, and you go ahead and tell us real quick what it is, and I'll bring it on the screen when you're ready.
Well, okay, so I'll be honest, I'm usually a pretty humble dude, and I don't like to hype myself up. And when I found out about this, I don't know which one of you out there nominated me for it, but if we can bring it up, here, Petey, it is official. I have been nominated for a Cheer Choice Award. So here's how this works, guys. The way this is going to go is you guys get to vote on who should win the award. Now, there's going to be a lot of different names out there, and I do honestly encourage you guys to vote for who you think would be the most, worthy of the various awards. I've been nominated.
Corione.
Well, I'm going to be honest. Look, there are some great channels out there. I am up for the Positivity Award for bringing positivity and good vibes to you guys out there in YouTube land. And so here's all I'm going to ask. I'm just going to ask something simple.
I vote for Corione.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm going to ask something simple of everybody who chooses to vote. Give the littlest channel the biggest shot. Okay, we are we're not the biggest community out there, but you know what? I believe in every single one of you guys. I believe in how amazing you guys are. And I think you do, but you believe in me just like that. So let's do it together. Let's get, let's make the biggest noise for the littlest channel nominated. And let's see how far we can go. I think we've got a shot at this. And you know what? All I can say is if you guys choose to send me to Vegas with your vote, kind of like sending me to Washington, I guess. But if you choose to send me to Vegas with your vote, it will be live streamed on my channel. All of you will be there with me because I can't do this without you guys. And, if you guys believed in me enough to get me nominated, I'm hoping you guys will believe in me enough to win the award. So, any help you guys...
All I want to say is we are not pro-witch hunt, but we are pro-witch vote.
There you go.
All
So yeah,
right.
guys,
Yeah,
please
no,
consider it.
it's
I
well
think it's
said.
awesome, and
Yeah.
yeah, guys.
All right. Is there any pop culture news that we can get up on deck while I
Wait,
take?
how do we vote?
So it's going to go live on the 15th when the link comes out to vote. I'm going to spam it out with additional information.
I'll have a
and I'll make
community
sure you guys get
post.
it.
Yeah, I'll have a community post out on the channel for it.
Let's do a short on how to vote.
We'll do
so
that
we
too.
can spread that around while voting for Corion.
Yeah, definitely. Good idea. Good idea.
Hashtag vote for Corion.
Good idea. All right. Well,
Yeah.
while we figure out what pop culture news we want to discuss for a little bit before, because we've got a lot of stuff to catch up. We got a lot to talk about Loki. We got a lot to talk about Andor. We got a lot to talk about DS9, and we got a lot to follow up with DS9's. I guess you could call it grandchild for all mankind. Oh boy. Oh my God. I just want to start the discussion now, but we can't. We got to save it for the end. But Daniel Larson says panel's thoughts on the latest DK vid. Fun to see someone at Lucasfilm, maybe a little bird, setting him straight on any trilogy remake. Thrawn the EU one is coming. Well, honestly, to me, that just sounds like a little bit of dripped vindication vindication is now starting to surface, because that's exactly what I've been saying should happen, is just do the Thrawn trilogy, get us a young Luke, young Han, young Leia, set to the proper, 6 years after the Return of the Jedi, and you'll have the fans back in droves, no problem. The story can even be it doesn't have to be the greatest Star Wars, it can literally just be fan service, the Star Wars trilogy, and it'll probably...
No, you have to just write a good story. You could even do like a Jack.
Oh yeah, I want a good story. Don't get me wrong. I'm just calling it how it is. That's all.
You don't even have to throw in a hero's journey, really, because we already know that.
Yeah, it's just they're just gonna show up and be the bestest evars like they were at the end of Return of the Jedi.
I don't need much.
That's
really short. I just need another Andor. You can even just have the Jedi and the other characters be ancillary to another Andor. I'm really vibing this, dude.
Andor's good.
Yeah, look, I mean, what I want is, I'd love to see the Thrawn trilogy given its due, because it is due. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what I want is the best writing they can give us, right? I want it to feel Star Wars-y. I want it to feel, I want it to feel like, oh man, Thrawn is a real credible threat. And I want, all of us to feel like, we've got the magic back that is Lucasfilm.
You know what's crazy? I was thinking about that with Andor today, and that's something that they actually have the huge benefit to their advantage, because they already did the light versus dark of the universe. That story's done. So now let's start messing with the gray. And Thrawn is very much the gray. He believes in the Empire because he's a military tactician who has successfully led people into heroism. A part of his empire. He doesn't feel like he's he knows he's killing people, but also he doesn't value life like normal people. Instead, he values it from a military tactician's point. All rebellion is basically mutiny. And that's the way he sees it, is it's just mutiny. And he thinks that everybody should just fall in line. And that's why military people shouldn't be in charge of the entire world.
No.
People that think like that are wrong.
Now we have plenty examples. We have plenty examples of why that's a bad idea in tonight's discussion. But also in upcoming DS9 discussions, we get some of that again. Oh boy, John, if you thought this week was fun, it just every single week of DS9s just gets better and better. So Nemesis of Eden says, even as someone who is very much casual scum when it comes to Star Wars, I know Thrawn is supposed to be one of the smartest and scariest Star Wars villains. Yeah, same. The fans who know Thrawn sold him enough, and I saw that Thrawn in the show Rebels. Did not really see that Thrawn in this Ahsoka series because there just wasn't time for any of it.
There wasn't time for it.
Or space. He had the most reduced amount of troops, and there was even an element of that because he realized that how else are you going to keep your troops in line if you don't allow them some individuality while they're all trapped in the same room?
Well, the way I look at it as Thrawn did the smartest thing he could in the situation. right? Because he evaluated the situation. He realized, okay, I've got several Jedi. One of them has been trained by probably the greatest Jedi ever to live. I can't beat them down without expending a huge amount of resources, but I can delay the hell out of them long enough for me to get out of here and just trap them here. Right? I don't have to beat them. I just have to maroon them on the island.
Well, no, because he thinks about winning in multiple levels. He's not like Darth Vader, who's like, no, the only way to win is through absolute destruction of my enemy. Instead, he's like, no, winning is literally keeping them from the fight by abandoning them a galaxy away.
Yeah, exactly.
That is
right?
not losing, and that's not just a minor win. That is literally the ultimate nice way to win. Are you kidding me?
And this is it.
And
And
now
like,
they can't come at him like, you killed my best friend. Instead, it's like, you duped us, buddy.
that's it, right? And I mean, the other piece of it is too, right? Like, Thrawn's whole shtick to me has always been like, look, Tarkin and the Emperor ruled through fear, right? Nobody was going to cross them because you don't want to wind up in the room with them. But Thrawn's like, no, look, I understand if you fail because, you know, an unavoidable situation occurred. I'm not going to hold you accountable to that. What I am going to hold you accountable for is your own incompetence. But if you're doing things right and you're doing what I tell you to do and we don't win, that's not losing, that's life. And I'm okay with that.
And
right?
on top of that, if you go boldly into that freaking Dark Knight, like fighting a Jedi just because you have a TIE fighter, he was like, no, give him honors.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
he's
it.
like, no, I'll reward the people that die in an impossible fight that I sent them to. Like, that's why I say, like, he's the most complex in terms of like a gray villain, because like, put him on the rebel side and he's a hero.
Yeah.
He's freaking General
All right,
Amidala
so-
all again.
Do we have any other pop culture news we need to address real quick before we get into our specific discussions for the evening? I mean,
I think it's been pretty quiet on the pop culture front so far.
yeah, I think at this point we're just waiting for official trade announcements of stuff that you know, we're waiting to hear for
I mean,
Lucasfilm. But
The one big one was that Warner Brothers had initially canceled Acme. Coyote versus Acme, and they're bringing it back because of the huge outpouring of people.
I have also heard claims that Ahsoka season 2 is renewed, but I tried to research and follow up on that. Apparently it's not as official yet, so I don't know. I couldn't find any final confirmation on it. But that just, you know, between a possible, so we've already got rumblings of a renewal outside of sources we typically follow, and now Daniel Larson's bringing in information that Thrawn trilogy is happening. So, you know, we are kind of technically getting a rebooted original trilogy if we do Thrawn trilogy. Why do I say that? Because we'll be getting new cast of Han, Luke, and Leia and Lando, very likely. And so what that's going to look like and when that's going to happen, we're just going to have to watch and see. Now that the actor strike is over, other films can get back to production. We can finally look forward to Dune 2, Deadpool 3, but in the meantime, we got content to catch up on, some of which we'll be talking about at the end of the discussion tonight. Eddie Arndt says, what's up, gentlemen? Just stopping by to say hi real quick. Sorry I've been real busy and haven't been able to make it to a show in a while. Hope everyone is doing well. Hey, Eddie, good to see you. Glad you're popping in to say so. Our stuff always stays up for exactly that reason, because we know some of our fans are hardworking folks that need to, well, be hardworking and to make a living. I get it. I'm a working folk myself, so it's not easy out there. But if we can be your place that you come to, our videos are here for your time. But of course, yeah, you know what you miss out on the live discussion, so and it's nothing we can do about that. Sorry. The only thing I can give you to show up for a live discussion is try to catch a game stream and, you know, talk about whatever you want. Otherwise, yeah, that's the Tuesday show and the Friday show. Those are set.
Did that help the audio?
Yes, you are coming in loud and clear, my friend. Just in time for us to talk.
Having a meltdown. I was just like, what the?
I know, technology is such a pain in the ass sometimes. Sean says, yo, what's up, everybody? Yo, Sean, good to see you. One of our newest fans who's been hanging out during game streams and showing up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, we do appreciate the dedicated fans. You know, we treat them more like family here. All right, with that, it's time to get into what is probably, if you are turned off by the MCU right now, you have zero interest, then I encourage you to go into this show kind of as its own thing, because it's not really, it in more ways than one, exists outside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, per se. So, it's really, and it really is not just like, you know, in universe it's its own thing, it's also, good. So it stands out in phase 4 and 5 as being something worth watching.
I think that's a lot of frustration, only because like it is 100% MCU, but I think it's the most meta MCU in a long time.
Yeah.
Like,
Well-
even Iron Man and a lot of the Avengers like really got a little meta with what they were doing and what they were trying to show as like, one of the problems with superheroes is everybody relies on superheroes to do all the saving. And so that's why Iron Man was constantly trying to find ways to replace himself with better versions of himself, creating Ultron and all that. But Loki here, like, without the MCU, the show just is a lot of nonsense. But with the MCU, knowing who Loki is,
Oh,
and
all right.
how
Let me rephrase that. It's up to Endgame. You only need to give a shit up to Endgame. Nothing that happens in Loki.
Not even care.
Yeah.
I just mean like you got to know that stuff.
That's it.
So really
That's what
like
that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I meant in current day Marvel, not all time Marvel. My bad, and I apologize. If
Oh, dude, I'm running under the impression nobody watched the new stuff. I haven't seen anything new.
No Way Home, I think, was my
what
only
we
other
did.
phase 4 product.
Well, we did.
Oh,
one,
Guardians 3 was good, man.
That
Oh, right. I forget
Love-
that exists because, again,
love
that's
Guardians 3.
good.
But again, it's all to that idea of that, like, they really did make good characters back then. And some people actually saw what they did, and Loki is one of those people. Like, whoever wrote Loki was really on their game and knew who Loki was.
Exactly.
And who Loki wanted to actually be. And this show is such an awesome display. Like, even from season 1, I loved season 1. Did not make any sense.
I mean,
in terms of what was already going on with the MCU, but like it was way better than Wanda.
well,
The thing
here's
is,
what I'll say. Season 1 really felt like the deconstruction of the character Loki.
Yeah.
Season 2 feels like they built him back up.
exactly
Right, but season 1 was the deconstruction of the villain Loki.
Yeah.
Season 2 was the reconstruction of the god of mischief and who should he really be mischievous towards.
Yeah, like honestly,
like,
this
how he
is
became a hero.
yeah, like the TVA is Loki's Paris Island, man. Like that
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Well, no, I think it's his greatest adversary because one, he's never gonna win. Because like the TVA, now is like a major part of it, right? Literally. But
Yes.
also like simultaneously, like he's still got that inkling to move and mess around with it, and he's still a part of the timeline. So other parts of him now though, he's also his own enemy. So as far as like who is Loki fighting himself, well, that's better than him fighting literally anybody else because he fights dirty and to win. So if he's
The
fighting
only
Loki,
adversary Loki can truly have is Loki.
exactly
because at the end of the day, the only person Loki won't kill is Loki. And that's why if he's his own worst enemy, he's everybody's best friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that ending was very I
Beautiful.
absolutely loved it.
Oh my
I love
gosh.
how they like
glorious.
made it into the world tree and stuff. That was cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was very appropriate considering the fact. I mean, he basically made, well, I don't know. Some of you guys are saying that you guys haven't seen it yet, and I gotta be honest, this is not one you want to sit on because while, okay, first of all, the end point when that ending happened, I was like, this entire series was on purpose. The whole point of the deconstruction was to basically bait fans into calling it out and seeing it, because, well, what's the end point of this story? Well, he ends up getting redeemed anyway. So they had a clear beginning and end. The point was not to demean the character at all. It was to make him, you know, fulfill his destiny.
It was
I guess
to obliterate his ego, so
I
that
was
he
like,
didn't realize who he truly was. Because, like,
yeah,
with all the power and stuff, he always had a scapegoat to never change, and nor did he. Like, every time Thor tried to convince him, like the same thing, Thor didn't become Thor until he lost his power in Mjolnir. He had to go through that journey. And I think the thing for Loki in season 1 was so much that he needed to be obliterated, but they also didn't do him dirty. I love
that's what I'm saying is they basically used woke tropes just to mess with us. And I love all of it because it's the show's called Loki. Hold on. The show's called Loki. So if it's named after the god of mischief, it would have to mess with us, the audience. And it did a very good job of that while also telling a very good story. And
coherent. Goodness gracious.
I
Proof
didn't
that they always could have.
Yeah, I didn't feel that there was any, and that's the other thing. I was very surprised that there's not a whole lot of technobabble. Like, there are episodes of The Next Generation that rely an embarrassingly large amount on technobabble. It's one of the reasons why For All Mankind is so good, is because Ronald D. Moore doesn't have to rely on technobabble to tell a sci-fi story. It's because he's able to actually...
One thing about technobabble, though, unfortunately, is not all of it's technobabble, just most of it is highbrow theory. Like, some people are actually putting in a genuine effort to understand it.
Right.
And they might actually be somewhere near the right in terms of a theory that they found and used to work the story. And props to you, but, like, yeah, it sounds like technobabble.
I mean, yeah, but it doesn't rely as
And
heavily...
there was a heavy amount in this show, but it was so much more
it was
towards
necessary.
the MacGuffins
Exactly.
that were actual plot devices. They weren't just one-off things that changed everything. They were legitimate through lines from episode 1 to episode 20, right? Like, or was it 12? They did 6 and 6.
Yeah.
But like to me, this was also the most frustrating thing about this. This is where you throw in a new Thor movie. And Loki tries to help him for a second. Or he runs into Loki on his journey for a second. Like, that's what these shows are so good at possibly teeing up, but then just the Marvels.
You know, so like, that brings me to Daniel Larson's comment. Use woke tropes to mess with us. I've heard that before. I'm sticking with Occam and say they're just sincere woke moments from an as yet unsalvaged MCU. Daniel, there's no salvaging the MCU at this point. After the Marvels.
There is. This is proof that you can.
Loki is
to show good writing fixes it.
Right.
The woke thing though is we do have to accept that the more we complain about the next generation and their opinions, the more we sound like our parents complaining about us and our opinions. And so the only thing I can really say to the woke stuff is keep writing it like this, and I don't care.
Well,
do your thing.
Okay, hold on.
As long as you write it well and it makes sense in a cogent, coherent
as long as you respect
story.
Me as a member of the audience and you're not getting preachy.
Exactly. And that's what I mean by respect us, is write it into the story like this. Because at no point in season 2 did I care about Loki being a boy and a girl. Because season 1 just forced it upon me, but also did it the way of good writing.
It's a
and
multiverse.
Made it make sense. Like, they literally forced an alligator Loki on me as well. And
which is best Loki.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
let's
Alligator Loki is best Loki.
No vote. It's proof. It's a done.
I mean, let's be honest. Like, I am pushing, and I'm saying this right now, Marvel, I know you're listening. We need a alligator Loki versus Frog Thor movie.
Yeah. All right.
That would be...
Nemesis of Eden has
and
got to
we
go.
need their sidekicks to just be humans.
Nemesis of Eden has to go.
All the talking
Nemesis.
So if there's any last word you want to say before you actually head out, because I know you just say you're leaving, but wait a few seconds for me to say it, which is fine. You're allowed to do that. You get special treatment here. I have to go now. My horror sci-fi stream needs me. I will see you guys on the re-one and see you. Stay amazing, beautiful beings. You as well. So if there's anyone
Nemesis, how come every time you say that, I feel like you're saying I must go, my people need me, and like you know, Superman yourself out of a window and just fly away.
It's like Dr. Coxon, Scrubs during JD's daydream when he flies out the window.
Yeah.
Let's go. I gotta go to my other streams. Nemesis, away!
It's definitely the horror sci-fi calls for aid,
Yeah.
and Nemesis will answer.
Like I'm Nemesis. I imagine you have a red phone on your desk that blinks when the commissioner calls.
Yeah, probably. But yes, I do recommend Loki. Overall, a solid 7 series worth watching. Good writing. No, the woke stuff is not hardly, like I said, it uses tropes to bait you for a second and then comes and slaps you back with a we didn't go that way. You thought that was going, but you didn't. It didn't.
Well,
we didn't
it
do
also
that.
just uses all of the things about like the rest of the universe. Like it's all lore appropriate. So it's like, okay, if you're gonna do it with any of the characters, you did it with the one that literally makes the most sense.
Yeah,
Whether
like-
you go to Norse mythology, like it's not like they did it with Jesus. That would be like, wow, left field.
Okay,
Ow.
but they made him into like a Jesus type though. So let's
Well,
not
that's what
kid
all
ourselves.
heroes are. Like, where do you think the trope comes from? Why do you think
All
so
right,
many people say it's a
Skogley's
myth?
ready to
Because-
respond.
Hit it.
Yeah, he's wildly different than the character that I'm familiar with, but I'm just happy and I'm satisfied that they built him up as a genuine god
Mhm.
and actually gave the character its due, even though it's different.
Stephanie Janizek says, waving from my bed. Night, guys. Night, Stephanie.
Cheers.
Thanks for
Good
saying
night, Stephanie.
Thanks for stopping in to say hi and bye. Have a good
Dude,
evening and a
that's
restful
such a
sleep.
good point. Because
After
I
all
was-
the
Actually, you know what?
knee
Hold on,
to the
hold
balls
on,
in the
guys.
first.
Maybe if we switch to NPR voices, we can keep Stephanie on for at least another 20 minutes while she lulls off to dreamland. I really thought that.
After all of the knees to the balls in the first season, it's very nice to see him like take the mantle as an absolute bona fide god.
I absolutely agree.
That's why I brought up the Thor point, is because the part about Thor having to go through the exact same treatment, but also being a jacked god, like really made it hard to see him suffer so much. Whereas seeing Loki being like literally human while he's working with the TVA, it plays this huge element of why it took him so long. Because like Thor barely even knew anything about his powers. Like Thor still doesn't realize that Mjolnir is a crutch, not an aid. And Loki has always known that he's a magician first, right? And that I think plays a huge part into it. But I love the fact that it's Tom Hiddleston Loki that tells other Loki, we're gods. It's our job to care about the people, not a human calling them out, saying like, come on, guys, figure yourselves out. Like, no, it's like the guy that's finally on the hero's journey, instead of going into the deep, dark abyss blind, he finally found himself and is like, no, it's our duty to do this because that's why we have this power. And it's like the opposite of having to be told with great responsibility, or with great power comes great responsibility. Instead, it's like, no, we are power, therefore we must be responsible.
Yeah.
I also want to point out just real quick, because Stephanie's here and she's listening to us. You do realize, Stephanie, that you now have 4 guys in your bed at the same time with you.
Dude.
And you know what? That's just impressive.
Way to
We're
to go.
born, it's a burger joint.
I mean, it's just anyway. So back to it's right. You two can have 5 dudes in your bed at the same time. We need to get H. Marie back on this show. It's getting a little too sausagey in here sometimes. All right. So speaking of what else? Yeah, I think overall the entire narrative was very strong. And yes, Daniel Larson. Well, Daniel, you didn't say whether or not you were in your bed or wherever else you're at, so we don't know where we are or where to tuck ourselves into your house for the moment. That's right. Pay us the airfare.
and we, the Ryder Brothers, will do a live stream from your bedroom if you pay the airfare and feed us and board us.
If you guys
hold on here,
let us
Petey.
know.
I think you're giving. I think you're talking a little bit for the rest of us. Here.
Hold on, John. You don't need to raise your voice. So now I'm just. It's an idea. Well, at the very least, I will live stream it. I'm the cheap one right now. Okay. I mean, hey, it's a free travel to one of our fans' homes to broadcast our show from. I mean, how do we not have that as a tier on our subscribe star yet? Probably because we're not popular enough yet or desired that much to be around. But we do appreciate the support, guys. All right, I'm going back to normal voice and normal sound. Sorry, it just gets to a point where you're trying to phone in the NPR voice to a point you start making yourself laugh the entire time, and it defeats the purpose.
Just turn down.
Yeah, I'll just talk a little bit quieter though. So yeah, what was I saying? Loki. We've said enough on Loki. It's now time for AnBore, as some have called it. Looking at you, Star Wars Theory.
A segue.
And Snore, or as I like to call it, Star Wars Andor, because it is. Contrary to what certain people like Star Wars Theory, who I do have respect for as a fellow YouTuber and somebody who's opinionated and independently, running his own show. I don't have anything against the guy. I don't agree with every opinion he has, but he definitely is doing a better job of being a Star Wars fanboy than I am. So there's a little bit of envy there, of course. But overall, I do think that, and I'll probably put out a video up on the channel when I get around to finishing my Generations video, and then eventually the ad for the channel. Projects I'm going to remind myself to keep up on by embarrassing myself publicly about them. He's wrong about Star Wars Andor.
What you say you are.
What?
You're nothing if not what you say you are.
Lazy? I agree. So Andor, he's definitely wrong on. Now, it's Theory's opinion, to paraphrase, so I apologize if I misquote it. Nothing demeaning or defaming intended. Andor, Theory feels that Andor isn't really Star Wars. It feels more like generic sci-fi, and that it lacks, the things that make Star Wars Star Wars. And I think that on the surface level, there's some validation in that criticism. I mean, there isn't a single lightsaber. But that's also my favorite part of Andor, is that there isn't a single lightsaber.
That spaceship definitely had lightsabers.
And that's where the discussion's going to go down the toilet tonight. So first of all, those weapons, those were more like Tony Stark's.
I want those on my Starfield spaceship. Like, I don't get why those aren't commonplace. Those are just what else? Like, it's the exact same thing as like wheel spikes in James Bond. Like, duh. You put that on your freaking attack car, and you put them on your tanks, and now you're just obliterating enemy vehicles. But, like, those are lightsabers.
They're a beam weapon that mimics the lightsaber that may or may not use lightsaber physics.
Dude, they are literally non-Jedi attempting to replicate lightsabers, and the best they can do is on a spaceship in space, because otherwise it would destroy the city.
You're missing the point of my point.
Giant weapon.
So anyway, Snore, or AnBore, as it's unlovingly referred to by some folks, is definitely not your, episode 4 action-y pew-pew. Here's a little bit of plot and backstory to why you're supposed to care, and then, we go into it. Andor is definitely a humanization of Star Wars.
Political intrigue.
It brings a new sense of realism to the escapism. Now, I know some people think that, well, the whole point of escapism is so I can go off and forget my real life here. And you know what? That's okay. If that's the type of escapism you want, absolutely. I agree. You don't have to like Andor, okay, to be a Star Wars fan. That's not required. However, to say that Andor isn't Star Wars is simply wrong. And it's wrong because it's got a lot of the ideas of Star Wars. Hope against all odds. We see...
Well, okay. Here's what I'm going to put forward. In the first 3 movies that came out, the original trilogy, we got space wizards, we got space fantasy, right?
Yeah.
in the prequel trilogy, we got not just the space fantasy and wizards and all that, but we also got a political drama, right? With Andor, we're getting a James Bond style film inside Star Wars. If anything, it proves that Star Wars is a universe that can accommodate any kind of story we want to tell. And that's a really good thing, guys. Like,
I've
it
had a
allows
lot of
more-
questions about what goes on the ground level, and this is like I'm like nerding out on this, like on the details of like, can this society actually function?
Yeah.
Well, dude, this is the difference between Spider-Man and the Avengers. Like, this is how you prove that your universe is whole, is that you can write this small neighborhood drama, which it turns out in a galaxy far, far away, a neighborhood is multiple planets, right? And it's more along lines, to me, I still stand by it being like an Ocean's 13, but like, what if Ocean was fighting for a rebellion rather than, or like being invited to fight for a rebellion? Because at the end of the day, like, what was Ocean doing? Getting his from millionaires and from the rich, which is a lot of like what Andor is doing at first. Like, he's just trying to make his way in the galaxy. And then it turns out that he can actually do something. And he's inspired not just by his mom, but also by like how he inspired his mom indirectly.
Yeah. Daniel Larson says, it's not space fantasy with wizards. It's not Homeric like the rest. It's the gritty underbelly of that world. And fans of space opera are not fans of Space Dirty Dozen. It also makes sense that those who were deprived of the rightful conclusion to the Luke Skywalker story are not satisfied with the artistic opposite within the same universe.
But also,
Okay,
like,
and
you guys
Daniel,
are right, but all we're saying is watch this now. Like, all of that stuff about the current stuff is true. We've said it too. We agree. But at the same time, like, give this a chance like, away from that. Like, let's not be the problem and group punish their group as well.
well,
Yeah, go
Because
ahead,
just like Loki, it turns out like some of the writers that are given Mandalorian worked out for a while until they got their hands on it. Like, pop culture always seems to make things popular.
Yeah.
And this is definitely not popular, and that's what we're trying to advocate for, is like,
Well, we'll get
yes,
into the
it's
popularity,
different,
but
but
let's
it's
let
also
Corion get his
awesome.
thoughts in.
well, all I'm putting out there, Daniel, is I agree with you, right? Like, this isn't your space wizard piece. What I'm arguing with, though, is that this is a very effective side story, right? If you look at this as this is happening while Luke is growing up, right? This is happening while Luke is going, while working that moisture farm. That's a good thing, though, right? Because we're getting, the universe is getting, it didn't get taller, which is what we want with Luke's story, but it did get wider. Right?
And it gets more real. Like, if you like when you say wider, Corian, I think like a lot of, like, for us it's obvious in terms of writing. Like, we like writing.
Yeah.
But for like other people, like, if you really think about it, Luke was prepared to join the rebellion like I was prepared to join the Marines. That's like me preparing to join ISIS at like 16. That's wild. And he was like enlisting. That's how far the movement had come by the time Luke was old enough to join. And I think that's what this is really trying to speak to, is that like, it started everywhere, but not just because Princess Leia was stealing the Death Star plans. Like, Princess Leia had to be coaxed into it as well. And I don't think Obi-Wan did any kind of a good story in trying to show that, but that's Andor did. Andor nailed it. Andor shows that how this world was building despite Obi-Wan living in a hole, right? Yeah. And that's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we need, for Star Wars to expand and grow, don't get me wrong, I want more Luke stories, okay? Because that the way I like to think about it is Luke's story moves the timeline along, right? And if we look at it that way, Luke's story moves it along, but the other characters expand the story out. so we get a wider, more flushed out world.
Right.
I think both types of story are absolutely necessary
Well,
to growing this universe healthy.
absolutely.
But
Because a lot of people forget that in episode 4, our heroes just kind of walk into the rebellion. Like, it's already there, it's already been happening. They just show up and they happen to be in the right place at the right time for key events. Now, does that make them less heroic? Not necessarily. This just helps us make the universe more relatable because it shows, you know, how does it's for me it's similar to DS9. It's DS9 is the proper deconstruction of the Roddenberry utopian vision because it shows how the rest of the Federation functions while the flagship's off being the flagship. Well, this is kind of like that in that instead of getting to our heroes being our heroes, we've got, you know, what was the logistics that made that possible. And I know logistics sound boring, but the thing is, we all used to think the prequel trilogy was boring until we realized that no, it was social commentary for what was going on in world politics at that time. And it's still going on.
They were all, like, everything's boring until the right writer makes it fun.
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
And I think Corion's point about calling Andor James Bond in the Star Wars universe is actually, like, the perfect point because, like, if you think about rebellions, that's why I brought ISIS up. Like, that's what they were trying to do for their community. Wrong way. Way too aggressive, especially just in modern society. That much brutal mayhem is wrong. But the thing about Star Wars society is that's what they were saying was going on. That's what they were saying motivated Luke and the light side to overcome the darkness. That's what they were saying was this big, great evil. And I think that's, like, something we also need to remember is that, like, George Lucas wrote The Biggest Bad and how the biggest bad became the biggest bad.
Yeah.
Andor is more of everything else.
Daniel Larson says, and as for Star Wars theory, Luke got him through cancer. I'd be surprised if he was cool with a Jedi-less Star Wars story. Look, I get that, but if anything, Andor just makes Luke all the better because it shows that the entire idea of fighting for what's right isn't just one Jedi with a green lightsaber does everything. It's also, here's the army that's backing our hero that's leading the charge. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see in the Thrawn.
It really showcases how special and important Luke really is.
Exactly.
It bolsters his story substantially because it expands the world. You're like, no, there's these Jedis aren't like just running around everywhere. Like these
just
they are like
to be in the
mythical.
right place at the right time because of the Force. No, here's how the Force gets other people involved to play a role in this bigger picture, and that's what Andor
Luke
shows
is
us.
genuinely like this mythical thing because people are always they were always like Obi-Wan back. It's like the Jedi, this mythical order, right? And that idea, I think, kind of got lost along the way. It was like, oh, this guy's Jedi, this Jedi. All you see is Jedis, right? They're everywhere, right? But it's like, no, hold on. Let's zoom out a little bit.
Yeah, they're supposed to be like 1 in a trillion people is Force sensitive, right? That makes, or something crazy like that number, right? Like it
felt like it was always like that's what I liked about Ahsoka. And that's more like, okay, I think like a lot of it is mostly just like the biggest issue with the prequel trilogy is that it's really convoluted to like 3 planets in a galaxy that's supposed to have trillions of systems that are all a part of 3 tiers of like the core, the mid core, and then the outer rim. And like all of those planets are intergalactic, inter-highways, and tons of mobility, right? But like we only see Coruscant, Geonosis, the Sith, and the Jedi. And so it looks like they're everywhere. But even in episode 1, Qui-Gon hints to the fact that like most Jedi orders everywhere else that aren't the main central hub are basically witch covens of like 10 to 12. And it's more like a monastery in the sense that not everybody wants to live by the code, so they can't even get in the door.
Yeah. So,
but on top of that, I think that like that's what Andor did so great is for us, we all kind of got that, and Andor proved it while simultaneously like Luke was a myth in the universe, but he was also a rare breed because he was inspired by Andor and people like Andor.
So Sean writes in, further bolstering our points here. Sean says, as a person who could care less about Star Wars, I like the political aspect of it. And that's a large part of the whole thing that makes it good sci-fi. It's not just about the fantasy aspect. There's actually a world there, and they do a good job of building it, even if there are parts people may not like. Same reason I like Game of Thrones. It just wasn't just about the fantasy. That's exactly it. That's why we need, like I think the best Star Wars story that we could come up with is if KOTOR could somehow strike a field between Andor and Ahsoka. And if actually even better, if that's what the Thrawn trilogy needs to shoot for. We need a Star Wars that isn't going, it can still be family friendly, but it needs to focus more on the adult fans, the adult 20-year-old, 30-year-old fans, like us, as well as all the way up to our own parents' generation. It does need to be more millennial and Gen X focused.
The way you do that is you just make a teenager the main character. Everybody wants to be their older brother. Everybody's going to grow up. Everybody was a teenager. So if you make the main character a teenager at any point in the story, you hit all of it, but you can then tell the big story, and all the kids are going to follow because they love, just like we liked Luke Skywalker, just like we liked Anakin, and Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan was the teenager in Phantom Menace. Anakin was the teenager in the second one, and then all the way on, that's duh. It's not hard.
Well, okay, I actually want to expand on what Sean said there, because I think he's got a really, really good point when it comes to Game of Thrones. Now, excluding the ending of the TV series, let's not look at that for a second.
Let's not look at it ever.
Right, but I really liked several of the storylines that were going on in Game of Thrones. I couldn't stand Kyber, the dark maester, basically, that was like Frankensteining up the mountain. I hated that whole.
He's my favorite character in Andor, though. I absolutely.
Well, yeah, look. I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing any part of this.
I know he's such a good actor, though. He was really good at selling me on hating him.
Guys, can I finish it?
Yeah.
But, I really didn't like that story arc, but I don't have to like every single one of the story arcs, right? I can really get down with Gendry Baratheon's story arc and find that to be the coolest thing around. Or I can follow the imp and be happy. But the great thing about open world narratives where you're telling multiple stories in a world is you don't have to like every single one of the stories. You can pick a part of the world and enjoy the stories that focus on that.
And then you like the world even more because you're invested in your favorite story.
Right.
And that is the secret, writers. The whole world concept, the idea of writing a good, fully built world, that's why it works so well. Continue, Brian. Sorry.
Yeah, if you're going to build an open world narrative, then you have to have different kinds of characters and different kinds of stories that are going to be approachable to everyone. Now, when George set out to write Star Wars, did he intend that? I don't know if he did. I tend to believe he wasn't initially intending on this being this big open world thing. But when it started to happen, he did the right thing and made sure other people could tell stories in his universe to flush out those parts that he didn't really want to tell himself. And that is the magic of the Star Wars universe. It's the same magic of the Star Trek universe too, right? Is that the door was opened to other types of stories in this universe. And that's what makes Star Wars special. It's what makes Star Trek special. It's what makes Game of Thrones special. You don't have to like every one of the plots. But so long as you have a couple of plots that you really enjoy, and a couple you're like, I'm going to follow anyway, then you're going to get hooked. And you're going to enjoy it. And that's what counts.
And then you're going to become a diehard. So writers, all you have to do is remember to write those. I feel like one of the worst parts about most woke media is that they don't at least write one of the good lines in anymore. They're almost always exclusively all the new stuff. And it's like, okay, thanks for easing us into this. Thanks for walking the audience through. Like, no, you're yanking us by your chain at your speed as if that works for anyone. And I think that's what made Andor so great. But also, I think that's like the thing that makes all of the good cult classics. Most people that don't like it are just like, oh no, that one bad plot line is the reason I hate the whole thing. And everybody that loves it is like, no, yeah, that's a bad plot line. That's a bad story. It sucked. But that's what made all the other ones better. We had something to compare it to.
Yeah. So, yeah, I love Daniel Larson's line here. Multiple story tracks within the same tale. Preposterous. What's next? You're going to have two hobbits go one way, a man and an elf and a dwarf go another, and then the wizard takes another hobbit elsewhere? Daniel, you caught me. I'm now going to have to scrap my entire Lord of the Bling movie I was planning on writing. Oh, well, I guess I'll have to start from scratch.
This hobbit's going this way, this hobbit's going that way. Gandalf's in the middle, like, what do you want from me?
Nobody ever pulls out a map except for like the 2 times that they're drawing battle lines and you're like, where is everybody? You don't get time to notice. Nobody points it out.
You know, they're unable to find the gap in the gap of Rohan, so they like wind up going to the Banana Republic instead. Like, you know.
Dude, honestly, Gandalf was just teleporting around. It's like, what if he missed? Like, what if Gandalf switches with Rick and suddenly Morty's in charge of everything? I feel like...
The Citadel of Morty's?
That's something people ain't talking about.
If y'all haven't been watching the new Rick and Morty...
Nope. Hell no. Nobody is. Nobody's talking about it.
So good. I've been enjoying it. Like, it's been fun. Again, I never didn't like it. I just also stopped liking to rewatch it. But I think that's because I watched it like 80 times.
There you go. All right, shall we move on?
Yeah, I think we should. Let's move on to getting the new banner up. All right, let's move on to DS9. And then we will conclude tonight's show with a bit of a teaser of our For All Mankind discussion, because we are picking up For All Mankind. Probably should have picked it up sooner, but whatever. We're picking it up now, and I gotta burn through it pretty hard. So, yeah. Deep Space Nine. What episodes were we on again? Oh, yeah. It was Starship Down, which is one of my old favorites.
And Little Green Men.
And another favorite of mine. John, first-time viewer, what did you think of Starship Down?
I mean, I'm having a hard time getting back into Star Trek, mostly just because of the visuals. Like, I've been watching Supernatural again, and that's even better in terms of visual quality, especially like growth. I'm like, frick, like 7 seasons into it already. But
well,
like, Deep Space Nine is so much more fun in terms of like everything we've been saying, like the character dramas, the actual characters are all their own, while also still trying to figure out how to work with each other, which is like the human condition. A lot of stories we watch is just constantly the hero finding out that they can be heroic, and it's like, okay, now how do they do that with all the other heroes? Do they just ask each other about the weather like I do to all of my coworkers, or do they like actually have good conversation? Can we get some hints? And that's where Deep Space Nine is like, yeah, here's all the hints. Look, it's awkward for everybody until you open up and show some of you so that they can enjoy some of you, and then you can see some of them and enjoy some of them, and now suddenly you can get to know friends and make like know people.
Like, the stuff with Major Cure was so good. So
right.
Good.
And for her to like have to deal with it herself and realize a lot of it was her just projecting what she thought of him, and he's just like, no, you were very standoffish, and I wasn't going to bulldoze that wall because you seemed to basically worship me, and that's awkward. But also happens to every captain in Starfleet, as, you know, respect comes with title, so I'm just going to be a captain about it.
Well, there's also another little piece about it. We are starting to see in this season Sisko becoming far more comfortable with his role as emissary. and
But I think
starting
it's
to
less a
embrace
moment
more
like
of the
this.
Bajoran culture.
Right, but I think this was one of those times where he finally heard it from the horse's mouth, like a real Bajoran who's also not insane. Like think about it in terms of like Joe Rogan listening to a captain talk about seeing a spaceship. Like he is suddenly like, okay, maybe I'm not crazy for liking aliens. And I think that's the same thing Cisco's going through here. Is he's like, no, Major Nerys is giving her opinions on her religion and how she views him in her religion, and she's not a wackadoodle. She is a cogent major that he has worked with and respected the whole time. And so he's like, okay, maybe I'm not as godly as I think they think about me.
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting layer to this, right? Because okay, we are starting to get to the point where we are getting the Cisco starting to embrace his role as almost a mythological figure, right? Like he's Heracles, he's Horus, he's like these kind of people, he's Hermes, right? Coming, bringing the fire of enlightenment to the prophets to the people. And he's starting to accept that this is part of his job, right? And that it's okay to be okay with this. And that's part of the good thing about this moment is I think this really crystallized that moment for him that he can be okay with that role too.
Well, I would go also the part where like Kira is like really just opening up to him to keep him awake, and he knows that, but he's hearing her again from. He has to listen. He can't say anything. He can barely breathe, and so in that moment, he's really just like realizing that he can captain of Starfleet his way through this role, just like he captains his way through the captain spot. Like a lot of it is fake it till you make it, but just remember how much of it is acting. Like a lot of problems with abuse of power comes from forgetting what's fake and what is real. And that I think is what Cisco has always had a problem with, because like since season 1, he was battling with the idea of being a leader in Starfleet who killed his wife and is now dropping him off as his new command. So like he's always been wary of false idols, and now he's like, no, I am a false idol. And now at this point with Kira, he's like, oh, I'm more still just the captain me. And like you said, like I think he's just now realizing I'm Prometheus. I could be a god to these people, but I don't have to be.
Yeah, and it's not even it's not even like a god to these people. It's I can give these people a positive role model.
Exactly.
Which they could use now, right?
And that's what I mean is like he could, like he has the two options, and that's what he was wary of. Is he's like, no, I'm not a false idol, so I'm not gonna be your god emissary just because you're giving me this title. And he fought it for so long, but now he's seeing how Kira sees him, and he's like, oh, I can just be a legitimate like you said, like somebody to look up to.
Yeah.
And that's like exactly what
And-
every good person should try to be.
Yeah.
Deep Space Nine's Starship Down is a hidden masterpiece of a story, though. I mean, like we've got a lot that's packed into the 45 minutes. But I'll go ahead and read the synopsis real quick, especially since Sean says he's flying blind. Sean, if you haven't started DS9, you definitely need to. Storyline: Captain Sisko is asked to mediate on the Defiant between the Karima and the Ferengi. Hanok, its representative, finds there's little profit in trading with them. Quark has made up all sort of non-existent fees, and Sisko is not amused. Then 2 Jem'Hadar ships suddenly attack the Karima ship. It tries to flee into a gas giant with dangerously high wind speeds, but the Jem'Hadar still follow. Sisko orders the Defiant to go after them to help the Karima. With barely any sensors and the phasers inactive, the crew must be creative. The situation brings contemplation. Kira reevaluates her relationship with Sisko as both the captain and the emissary, while Worf learns a few things about command. Shout out to Arnud Teal once again for a fantastic synopsis of one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek in general. Even if you watch this as a standalone episode, you can totally get what's going on. And
it's really great messages and themes, like particularly what you guys are hitting on in dealing with, religion in the workplace. And that's really what that entire conversation is about, like what an appropriate amount of faith and what a great way to have that conversation by theming it, as Daniel Larson points out, by having one of the Starfleet officers be a religious icon. And I'm pretty sure that the handbook did have a policy amended for it after the fact. Daniel Larson, after Cisco became emissary, that was probably some admiral was like, oh, I know how I'm getting promoted. We need to put in a policy for this.
Starfleet handbook is a living document.
Yeah, of course, all the time. It really is. But
as it should be.
Yeah.
All handbooks should be living documents. Are you kidding me? Everything changes all the time. It's the only thing you can count it.
Exactly.
Write it down.
Well, I love that every Canadian military handbook starts with, "This handbook is just a guide. In actual conflict, the terrain dictates everything."
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of different character growth that goes across. I mean, even Quark, learns that you can't just assume everybody's as dumb as they think just because they're doing business efficiently doesn't mean they're stupid. It just means that it makes more sense. But even the efficient business practices of the Karma lack innovation and lack, the thrill of risk, and that's why gambling can be so enticing to certain businessmen.
That also explains why the Ferengi culture is based on it. It's not just the part about doing money and making money. It's about the risk of getting as much as you can at the risk of losing it all.
Did you know the Ferengis and the Bajorans follow the same thing?
I did not.
Profits.
And that is Scogliotin's dad joke for the day.
That's a good one. No,
That's an original.
It's a solid one. Daniel Larson says, I guess Starfleet figured with the Prime Directive they wouldn't have to deal with the cargo cults, but they don't count on aliens outside of time predicting Starfleet personnel. Yeah.
Pretty much, right?
Exactly. Sean says, Ferengi culture is absolutely a cost-benefit analysis. I'm sorry, I thought you said you didn't watch any DS9. Yet you seem to already understand that, because that's where a lot of the Ferengi lore is propped up and dropped, is Deep Space Nine. So that's where we find out that, oh yes, they are, in fact, hyper-consumerist capitalists, perverts.
Oh, when Nog goes over, like, their actual, like, the religious aspects and how he explains the threads of the river and stuff, it's like, oh, there's actually something there.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think it's
like
Fate, Treachery, and the Great
and
River.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I think the episode is called Fate, Treachery, and the Great River.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Great Material Continuum is what he refers to. And you know what? Like, look, there is... Okay, I would argue that Deep Space Nine does a lot for a lot of character backgrounds and whatnot, but it does best by the Ferengi, by taking a character or like a generic alien of the week that should have been like a bad guy that was like a dumb bad guy, and turning them into a well thought out, deep people that are surprisingly more involved than people give them credit for.
Yeah.
And not just involved,
Sean,
but
hold on real quick. Sean says, I know enough because I have nerd friends, lol. And all right, well, I now pronounce you honorary DS9 fan, because that is, like I said, that is a deep lore aspect that only is found in DS9 that you already, have your PhD credentials for. So
There you go.
you actually listened during the lectures. Good job.
well, okay. So I think the thing about Ferengi culture is like the thing that DS9 does that Star Trek always intended to do is like Star Trek doesn't try to obliterate anybody's culture, right? So they're not trying to bulldoze reality, but they're also like, we got a 30-minute time slot. And-
Or 40, I think it's
45
48 minutes
4 or 5,
an episode, yeah.
4 or 5
yeah,
minutes.
and that's including the 5-minute freaking intro song. And when you add
Hey,
all of that
don't you
together-
be bashing the intro. Star Trek intro is a true staple of Star Trek and is a requirement. It's the one thing that Picard Season 3 failed to deliver
But it
on.
never changes. Like, I'll give Netflix credit for that lately, man. Evolving
That
intros.
never changes. We got a new
actually-
intro for this season.
okay, but like Supernatural changes the color, and that's nicer than changing the song and also still making me listen to a 5-minute song. I'm just talking smack, but
Yeah, it's
what I'm
bad
trying to
enough I
say-
have to live with the fact that my father-in-law, well, he's free to watch shows in his free time as he wants. He skips the intro to the Orville.
Yeah, I skip all intros after listening.
I'm
to
gonna
it.
pretend I didn't hear that.
Like, my biggest thing is like, the Star Trek always intended to have these stories fleshed out and have their characters fleshed out, but they didn't have time all the time. But this is where they took the time. Like, they saw the chance to make another species make sense, but then, like, the worst part is like they just really explained Wall Street culture and the broker bros. Like, oh my God, if Ferengi aren't just literally every single business CEO in the entire world, like short-term profits trump everything because life's a risk, let's go. And it's like, guys, lay off the cocaine, take a nap. Everybody needs rest. And also that's how you create more productivity is with rest.
And yes,
And that's where Ferengi fail. And that's why Ferengi, like, that's why I like the second episode that we watched, The Little Green Men, and that's where like the Ferengi had to like really come to terms with the fact that like humans were all of the things while Ferengi picked one.
Yeah. Daniel Larson, I don't think it was just the Klingons that were Wolviot stand-ins. I think it was also the Romulans were also a part of that. I think the idea was to have,
Well, the
Russian-
Romulans were supposed to be China,
in
and
TOS.
the Klingons were supposed to be the Soviets.
Oh, right, I forgot.
yeah.
China was like big time. Yeah, China was big asshole back in the day. Oh, still is, but just in a different way.
I'm pretty sure it's the Rushulans and the Chinulongs.
And it's not China. It's just the stupid party that controls China.
But because the Klingons are so obviously just Mongols. Like
I'm
literally,
actually
a
a professional Chinese cook now, so I know I do love China, but it's that damn government that I just can't.
But all I mean is like the Klingons are such an obvious riff on Mongolians and Vikings.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
literally
dude,
just
and
being
samurai.
a personification of that. Mostly.
There's
Dude.
a lot of samurai culture incorporated into it too.
Post
There's
OG.
there's this samurai order which like very butchered Kota Bushido.
Yeah, no,
Because
look, like
Kota
post-
Bushido was more honorable than the Magna Carta by far.
Oh no, look, post TOS, they became heavy metal space Vikings.
Yeah.
And I'm not even mad about that, for the record. But they were originally the Klingons were originally supposed to be communist stand-ins, right? But they became something, way cooler in Deep Space, in Next Generation, and
Way
they
cooler
became
than
more badass in
communists?
Deep Space Nine, right?
Well, I think that's exactly what Roddenberry intended. Is he was like, here, let me use tropes that I know that people know, but I actually don't want to disrespect anybody, so I'm not going to write their entire backstory in one page. Instead, I'm going to leave room for them to grow into a species, and we'll see what happens. And that's exactly what he did with the Ferengi as well. But at the same time, like, also here's why we're not them, but also kind of them. Like, that's what Roddenberry did better than anyone, is it is so much. We are all capable of being Klingon-esque, like Vulcan-esque. We are all capable of forgetting that our friends matter just as much as the rest of humanity.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, on a base level, if we all have the right to exist and have ideas, I agree. But I mean, I don't care about things that happen beyond my scope of view and my friends. Not necessarily because I don't want to, but I only have so much time and energy to give a shit. And yeah. Anyway.
All I think about it in terms of is more of predicting the storm, being aware of the changing tides. Like, we have the ability to hear the winds louder than ever. So listen a little bit, but also at the same time, when you're listening, remember that all those people are friends with their friends. And everybody is just a person trying to person in this world. And that's what makes it so freaking hard, is none of us know how to communicate. that's why I love watching shows like DS9 and watching shows like just in general, is its writers communicating with the world and proving that it's also that hard. Because when they fail, man, do they fail miserably. Just like when your friends tell you their favorite bar story that they think was awesome and you think might be an alcohol problem sign. Like, it's all about the delivery.
Yeah.
Boy, man, you really are recovering from the Marine birthday bash, aren't you?
It was a party and a half.
Yeah,
I
but
was
yeah,
embedded.
no, this particular, like I said, Starship Down. It's got a little bit of, because then we see Worf having to realize that, officers and enlisted, there's a little bit of difference, and there's also a bit of difference between bridge crew and engineering crew, and of course, really, we all know that the real difference is between, main cast and side characters. Anyway, and extras for the day.
But a good leader treats everybody like
A
their
good
mate.
leader does not look down on the readiest of red shirts. Just because you're gonna die in 3 seconds doesn't mean I don't have to anymore.
Yeah, just because you don't have a first name doesn't mean you aren't a person.
Doesn't mean you don't matter.
Doesn't
crewmen.
mean you weren't a person.
Yeah, right.
And he got vaporized. Now I don't have to care. All right. Now for one of my other all-time favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine and Star Trek in general. Little Green Men storyline. Nog is about to leave for the academy, and Quark spots a perfect opportunity. He has just received a shuttle from his cousin Gala that was promised him 10 years ago. He doesn't trust it and asks Rom, but can find nothing out of order. Quark and Rom decide to take Nog to the academy with it. Not because Quark approves or wants to do the boy a favor. He wants to take contraband along, chemosite, which makes great enhancement for your weapons in Star Trek Online, fun fact. When they arrive at Earth, they find out Gala's intentions weren't so good after all. He sabotaged the ship, they can't get out of warp, and eventually it will tear to pieces. Rom can think of only one thing: start a cascade reaction in the chemosite, create an inversion wave in the warp core, the crash land, technobabble on Earth, and hope for the best. When they wake up,
no.
they are locked up in a room. Earth seems to have changed a bit. It's 1947, Roswell, New Mexico. Oh, they might run into the Futurama crew while they're there. The three aliens are then taken by the local authorities, who are both fascinated and fearful of these extraterrestrials, and Quark must find a way to con their captors in order to escape and find a way back to get to their own time. Shout out again to Arnold Teal for a just amazing summary without spoiling everything, although yeah, this one's one of those time travel bottle episodes that by the end they make it back into the 24th century. We just don't know how. Oh, whoops, I spoiled it. Sorry. No, I'm just kidding. This episode is absolutely worth it. This is like talking about the Twilight Zone, where you talk about the whole episode and you're like, at the end of the day, you gotta just go watch this episode for yourself.
Bro, this is one of the things that is my favorite thing about sci-fi. Okay, real life, boring as shit once you pay attention. Once you really start to notice that most people are just like you and basically eyeballing it, and once you've learned enough tricks to get by, life, pretty predictable. You're going to go to work, you're going to go home, and if you don't break any laws, nobody's going to knock on your door. And that's the circle for the most part for most people in modern society. But if any single one of us got superpowers or super technology tomorrow, life would get really, really, really fun. And that's what sci-fi does when they bring us back in time. Sometimes to today, and those episodes are awesome. But also when they go back to the 1940s or when they explain Roswell. Nobody else has explained it or even tried in real life, so let's have some real fun with an alien show. I thought these are my favorite episodes. Is when they go back in time, and sure, it's a bottle cap episode. They're going to go back to the top. Everything's the way it was at the beginning because it was all actually part of the timeline. But also, it was fun to see what they tried to say happened back then. And it's also funny how they react to the 1940s compared to the 1990s? They were pretending like they were so highbrow. And now imagine think about it, dude. The 2003 babies are writing movies about the 90s right now, judging them just as harshly.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so I'm gonna put this out there, guys, and I really, I know I'm gonna be the one in the room. I actually am not a big fan of this episode, believe it or not. And
all right, we had a good run. So we're on talking about why this episode is the greatest episode of all time, and it's the bestest episode ever, and why Corey Otis wrong. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna set the. But after that outburst, I feel I need to set the banner back to appropriate.
Scogli, I noticed that as soon as I'm gone, you stretched out. So I'm just warning you, buddy.
Well, he needs the room anyway, according to
But
you.
yeah, no, look. Oh no, like the dude's a giant. But anyway, he's Jotun appropriate. But look, my point on the episode is this: that it just, because there's no stakes.
It's really campy.
Right. It has that level of too camp for me. But I can appreciate the episode for what it is, which is a great little bottle episode where they try to have fun and they let Quark and Rom and Nog chew on the scenery until they're spitting out latinum. And you know what? That's fine. Like, I do get the humor. I do get like all the little pieces on it. And I do also understand that camp is an essential part of Star Trek. This isn't my kind of episode, but I appreciate that it is a good episode. If that makes any sense to you guys.
Yeah, it's not. It's fun. It's not. It's reminding us that Star Trek has cheesy time travel moments. You know, the Enterprise flew back in time to 1957 and, fought off a couple of P-51s. I mean, it's.
But for the first time, the stakes were completely imaginary. Like, what was Roswell? Oh, it's just the Ferengi messing with the U.S. Army. Ha 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 ha. Like, sure, it's campy, but also, like, okay, finally. Like, the Ferengi didn't change World Economic Forum and decide how to run the rest of the world. They didn't infiltrate anything. But also, did they? Question mark.
And I will say that I do absolutely love when the universal translators fail. That is a great scene.
That's a great moment, yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And that we get to hear like what the Ferengi are hearing English as is really damn well done.
Yeah, Daniel Larson says, getting to hear Ferengi language is trippy. Getting to hear their confused understanding of English trippier still. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it would sound like English. They wouldn't understand what anybody was saying, and that's the whole point.
First time they actually heard it, literally.
Yeah.
Like, usually when we hear things through the transponder, it's our voice.
Which, in retrospect, is a ridiculous expectation. It's now been more appropriately mimicked. In newer Trek properties, they're getting it more accurate that you still hear the normal language while this translator spits out, what it is. Because that's
No, that was only for that one species that hadn't been recorded. Not everybody else was speaking basic.
English. Basic as Star Wars.
What common?
I know.
When
English
you-
is a shit basic language. Don't get me wrong. I don't find it.
And there's nothing
But-
basic
No, dude,
about English. It's the
there-
most convoluted of the languages.
It is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Dude, English is the only language I've ever heard that follows other languages down dark alleys and steals their adverbs at gunpoint.
And then
And
makes
then
them make less
teach
sense.
them anyways.
Well, it is also a double speak language too, so it's not an honest language. Let's be real. 'Cause
Well, and then
you can
on
lie to
top of
somebody
that-
by saying things that sound like the truth.
On top of that, add in American capitalism also caused us to obliterate half of the words just to cheapen printing.
Okay, I'm also going to go. Daniel Larson might have just won the chat so far, or at least he's in the lead. But we all know you haven't heard Ferengi speech until you've heard it in the original Klingon. Dude.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. Yeah. Way to quote another one of the greatest Star Trek movies ever made. Right there, Star Trek VI is without a doubt one of my favorite Star Trek films of all time, as well as just a really great Star Trek story that I feel is
I
very
gotta
underrated.
watch that one again. The legend
It's one of the
himself.
few. It's probably the Star Trek movie I would go to try and get a new fan interested, because it really shows the it's a standalone, and if you really want to know the rest of the history, you can go back to watch TOS and the rest of the movies. If you want to know the history continuing on, you just have to start TNG and then go into DS9 and go.
It takes itself very seriously.
Yeah, 6 is probably one of the best Star Trek films because it's a standalone, because it's a very contained story that still feels like, and it feels like the proper ending to the original series. It feels like TOS. Actually, all of those films, in my opinion, feel like the Red TOS season 4. I mean, you know, you stack them all up. That's about what it is. Basically, you know, a 10-hour series right there. So by modern day standards, it's aged very well. Also, the refit, the Constitution Mark II is one of the best looking starships in all of Trek. So,
Yeah, it's pretty solid. Yeah.
There are no rules. Yeah, exactly. Daniel Larson, correct.
Yeah.
All right, so any last discussion for DS9?
Well, I was just going to say, I believe after Little Green Men, we're starting to get closer to the back half of this season. And that's where we stop getting the campier episodes and we start moving into the more serious, more hardcore.
This is where the show puts its big boy pants on and basically keeps them on for the rest of the series. So yeah, you'll definitely want to pay attention to the writing, John. I mean, I know you said that audibly you could still listen to it. It feels like a radio play. So hopefully you could enjoy it for that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, never said I didn't enjoy it. Just also fully aware of how old it is.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that I do want to do after we finish Deep Space Nine is I do want to try to get you guys to do a watch on Babylon 5 with me.
Yeah,
because I think
I've never seen a. I don't think I've seen a single. I haven't seen a single episode. Only time I've ever seen any clips from Babylon 5 was like on like way back in the day when I was like
100%.
12 and I was watching like Entertainment Tonight or something. You'd see a little clip of it here and there.
And
like,
I will say that the new Blu-ray release of B5, they have upgraded all of the CG.
Oh, really?
So with any luck, John, it will be a little more palatable for you.
I've heard Babylon 5 is rough.
Well, no, look, the original CG was like, it was the first time they were actually using CG in a series. So it was rough. Like, I'm not going to even argue that it wasn't. And even with like the updated CG, you know, the show really feels 90s, if only in wardrobe.
It's like got the graphics like sliders.
Daniel Larson says. Daniel Larson says, "Looks like I'm gonna have to wait a long time for that Gargoyles watch along. I'm gonna need to be refreshed or reminded of that. Send me an email about it or bring it up in the chat. I don't remember unless John said something and promised something that I'm forgetting.
Oh, I think he's just throwing in his favorite show.
I mean, I don't know. We do have the new live action show.
That's what we asked
out,
for.
so.
And yeah, if you want Gargoyles, I'll watch it real quick. Like, the funny thing is like, A, the only reason I'm taking this show slow is because we're watching it together, and B, I have a horrible memory, so if I try to rush it, I'll eyeball every single discussion. Like, see, I love CGI. Like, since Transformers, I know it's not the best according to anything, but according to CGI, it's tops. Like,
the first Transformers film is still an artistic masterpiece. Even Corey Owen can find good things in it, whether he wants to or not.
No. When you say the first Transformers movie?
One.
I mean the first live action. Michael Bay. First live action Transformers movie.
The first Michael Bay.
Which is, it's about...
Megan Fox washing the car.
Listen,
it's the greatest car commercial I've ever seen in my entire life. And thank you for finally bridging the gap between sci-fi and commercial.
Yeah, and I mean,
I support that.
If you want to gossip her, Jennifer's Body is a better movie.
Oh, yes. She's dead though.
Still hot though.
Oh God! All right, no.
No, I'll go with
Pineapple
the
on the
washing of the car
necromancy.
and the short shorts.
Jennifer's Body's a vampire movie. Chill.
I said
And-
pineapple on the necromancy. All right.
But at the same time, no, I think the CGI, it's just something I love, and especially like watching the evolution of Unreal 5 and Unity finally being released to like the public, where if Houdini had been released to the public, you would have actually seen substantial market growth rather than the 7 studios that produce movies. Like, come on, pull your heads out of your ass. The more you can sell to, the more you sell to. But Unreal caught on, and they started this engine that is just amazing. And so for me, looking at CGI, I'm just like, come on, let's watch that. Like I have such a problem with like being satiated by good CGI that the movie can be utter trash. And yet, Shia LaBeouf's performance, I make fun of it the whole movie. But every time Optimus Prime transforms, I'm like, yes. Yeah. I'm about it. Every time Bumblebee does a freaking sick dodge roll blast, that's fake for fake. Like, I love it. So, like, that's where DS9, like, if anything, that goes to show how good of a show it is like, I can be satiated by bad writing and great CGI. And I can also be satiated by great writing and, yeah.
And literal shit. Anyway, no, I mean, I don't know.
The amount of shaking in space, man.
Yeah.
It doesn't make logistical sense.
Nope.
But it's cool.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, I do like the first Transformers movie, and the third one I thought was fine too. And yes, visually speaking, is mostly what they are, eye candy. But you know,
I actually walked out of the third one. Like I straight up.
I found the second one to just be an absolute turd.
Oh, the second one was bad too. I'm not even arguing that.
The
third
felt
one,
like it
I
made more
just
sense.
stood up and walked out.
But anyway,
Dude, none of those movies made any sense. Like they just kept going escalating reason for Transformers upon escalating reason, as if they couldn't just do, hey guys, now that the Transformers sent out a beacon, oops.
Yeah. Daniel Larson says the pixels on the P-Stream Bumblebee lets loose on John Turturro. Yeah, Turturro, Chef's Kiss. Yeah, no, it's. I grew up with Transformers Armada. That's still my favorite series. It's also the only series I've watched all the way through. But you know, so that was my experience going into it. When I saw live action, I was like, oh my god, it's awesome. And then I found out, okay, I would like a live action Armada timeline at some point.
It's the only one I want, dude. Are you kidding me? Many-Cons make like that's the part where it actually makes sense that like the robots are messing with people, because like the Autobots are literally Godzilla. Like, screw you guys. But like the Mini-Cons being caught up in the middle, hey, those are basically our kids.
No, look, honestly, if they had done Armada in live action, I would have zero problem. Okay.
Well, okay, doing the script, like, in, updating it for an all audience, not as a kids show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, you could have even had Shia LaBeouf get his little scooter, but like, come on.
Yeah. Cosmic Vader drops in and says, did I miss Andor talk? Luther and Rel's speech makes Luke and Han getting medals all the more powerful. I agree. Andor just makes the original trilogy even better. Not the, I'm probably going to actually enjoy Rogue One now because I need to watch it after the fact. Daniel Larson says, I felt so betrayed by the fourth one. I came to see Optimus riding a Dinobot with a sword, and it was only 10 minutes long. Yeah, I didn't even watch the fourth. I stopped after the third because
I actually liked the fourth one because I love King Arthur being mixed in. Again, I love when they try to make myth attached to their universe. Horrible way to do it. Just the most butchered thing I've ever seen.
This is news to me. They incorporated King Arthur into the Transformers movie.
Look.
Oh, he's a major component.
Can we move on? Guys, this is my this is the thing that makes me suffer. Like, this is, just thinking about this is torture enough.
Pouring water on him if he was water solvent.
But let's also not forget every episode, this is the actual last thing that's true about our relationship with the humans.
Dude, that makes my brain like just crumple. I'm just like,
Okay, well, let's feed your brain some discussion about a little bit of a teaser discussion of For All Mankind. As some of you know, we love our Apple products on this show, and by Apple products I mean television, because the iPhone is absolute trash. How would I know? I tried one. Not a fan. Give me my LG Androids forever. So, as far as Apple products that I love go, I'm a big fan of their TV shows. I love Ted Lasso. Absolutely recommend watching that show at least once or 3 times if you haven't yet. Silo is one of the best visual mediums ever put to screen. Absolutely worth it. Scogli is a huge fan of the book series as a result of watching that show. So, again, all the more reason to dive into the Siloverse. I thought their Macbeth was amazing. I also thought that the movie Coda, while it was probably not as deserving of the Oscar as Macbeth in my opinion, both of those films were fantastic. Another great sci-fi show, Severance.
Mm-hmm.
Long and short, Apple hasn't disappointed me yet, and we see that continue to happen with For All Mankind. I had no idea what I was getting into with this show, and I'm only 6 episodes deep, and I am so excited to catch up on this for the rest of the week so that we can watch it with everybody else weekly, because season 4 just came out, and I cannot catch up fast enough. But Corion, you watched the first 3 episodes. What do you think so far of For All Mankind?
So I remember when this was initially pushed out there as an idea for a series, and they really, really tried to push the narrative that this was going to be the first women in space kind of thing, and they were really, really hardcore hammering on that. And you know what? So I initially didn't watch it when it first came out. Like, I initially was like, this is feeling a little more woke than I feel like it delving into. I watched it though, and there's actually a decent story here, and there's really good writing. I can see the potential that this series has, and I want to see it realize that potential, because there is something here, and it does seem like it's going to be good, and I want to see more, and I want to watch more of this, because I think this is going to be one of those series that is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be a good prequel to The Expanse, but it certainly feels that way.
is
that
it a
it
prequel
could
to
be.
The Expanse?
It's
No.
not a prequel to The Expanse officially,
It
but
is
like headcanon, it is. Like The Martian headcanon, like the movie The Martian, in my headcanon is a prequel to The Expanse.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I'm honestly, until you, PD, you posted about, you made a little comment in the Discord like yesterday, maybe the day before, and that is the first time I've heard anything about it. I was like, Mankind? Wrestling? What's going on here?
Oh, so you haven't even watched a single episode yet?
I'd never heard of the show until like you said something. Mankind is amazing. I'm like,
Yeah. Wow.
Mick Foley?
No. No, yeah, so we've got, they're only 10 episodes, but they are over an hour long each, so we've got about 30 hours of, probably closer to 34 hours of content to plow through to catch up on season 4.
And you're
But-
not missing a single thing. I've seen every single episode so far, and let me tell you guys, you're all right. Like, Corian, this is not just the prequel to Expanse, it's the prequel to any show that says Earth figured out space technology on their own. Like,
Yeah.
without Enterprise, technically this is the prequel to Star Trek. Like, it's so fun, but also like really explains like what happens when you're the winningest winner of all time. It makes life really boring. But like when the competition is real, man, the amount of things that can happen.
Yeah, so
Like, the amount of
Scogli,
exponential growth.
since you have not seen a single episode, allow me to try after only watching, I feel like one of those fanboys that's like, I've seen I have seen 7 episodes of For All Mankind. It is the greatest show ever. I know this already without seeing the rest. I don't need to see the rest of the historical to sell you on this. Actually, I really don't, because even just the first 7 episodes are worth the ride. Or excuse me, 6. I'm on episode 7. This takes place in an alternate universe, 1969. What happens is in January 14th, 1966, the top Russian physicist for their space program survives a surgery that in our timeline he died from. It is Ronald D. Moore, who is the creator and one of the writers of this show, which you guys would know Ronald D. Moore from DS9. That's why we're doing DS9 first before we move into this. That's basically how he starts this universe. Is it starts with, okay, what if that physicist didn't die? This doesn't completely change the timeline right away. It's a very slow rippling effect that first begins with the Russians landing on the moon first, much earlier than NASA does. NASA still is projected to land on the moon on July 20th in 69, like they originally did in our timeline. But the Russians get there first, and that starts a big chain of events that just starts to change the course of human history overall. In the space program, NASA decides also the Russians put the first woman on the moon. And that also causes NASA to start integrating women into the astronaut program much sooner than they would have originally. And so it's an entire new take on the space race, but also it makes leaps in the timeline. Like between the 5th and 6th episode, 2 years passes. So it's definitely a show.
Parker, I think you just nailed it. I think the way you described it, Scully, the best thing about it is literally like any of the Star Trek Back in Time episodes, but we get to watch the entire ripple. Just that whole timeline now played out without any skipping to the next part. Like instead, a mysterious thing saved the scientist. And for me, like the way I love to describe it is it's the man in the high castle in level of detail and elaboration, but instead of like what if the one, it's what if the Russians won the space race. And it's so fun.
Interesting.
Well, yeah. Not that they won. They win a couple of milestones in the space race, which then, causes a huge chain of history. But it also really does a very good job of dealing with certain shady characters from history. Like Von Braun actually gets I think, properly handled and dealt with in this show, as well as just everyone in general. If you're a Nixon fanboy, I will forewarn you that Ronald D. Moore is not. He does not hold back in his assertion of Nixon being a corrupt asshole, which, well, I mean, history points out that wasn't that great. But they don't play one-sided. They do change history. Somebody else gets elected after Nixon, and things change on that front. But I'll leave it at that as to what happens. But even then, they don't play nice with that president either. And that's probably why I'm starting to love this show, is that it's not trying to be preachy. It's not woke. It's just using kind of like, not really like Loki using them to fool you. It's playing based off of history. It's taking a look at the historical account of what happened in that era through an alternate timeline. And it's basically showing, why this stuff was happening, and people were mistreated for the most absolute and wrong of reasons. And even then, and I blame modern day cancel culture on McCarthy, because that was the original cancel culture. Was, oh, you think that communist ideals are good? Well, now you don't get a job. Now you don't get a livelihood. And that's not correct. Unless people are actually harming somebody with their ideas and actually causing harm, there is zero reason to censor anybody or destroy people's lives just because they say things you disagree with. With that said, I'm going to put the other banner back up. So, that is where, so as far as multiverse stories, and that's the other thing, is I know a lot of people are getting tired of multiverse this, multiverse that. Guys, multiverse is the next step in storytelling. It's now taking ideas that we've played out in their timeline, and now we're doing this with new historical fiction in a very cool way. Like, I absolutely am on board with everything that I've watched in For All Mankind so far, because it's not my universe. It's an alternate universe. Why am I going to get upset about characters and decisions that happen in a world that is not mine to control? It's silly that people have such disagreement over fiction to the point of, oh, well, this doesn't happen. Okay, well, it's about having a dialogue. It's about talking about these social events. It's about having the conversation. It's not necessarily about, oh, your beliefs are wrong and you're an idiot for believing them. There's none of that, actually. I've found that they handle conflicting ideologies with reason and respect in a very human way. The show blows me away. That's all I can say.
Look, I'm enjoying what I've seen. I want to see more, and I'm looking forward to where this goes. I was pleasantly surprised by the writing, and I hope they continue to do so, and I think that's where I'm standing on it.
Yeah. Daniel Larson says, commies are the first cancel culture. McCarthy just became to fight them. I'd say McCarthy was a toxic reaction, all things considered, because you're right in the sense that in Russia, the Communist Party was canceling people.
Tyrannical. Look, Apple is doing one of the greatest things I've ever seen, especially when it comes to this show, and it's literally.
I would give credit to Apple. I'd give it to Ronald D. Moore.
I give it to Apple in the terms that they finally invested in these writers, and because they did it the same with basically every show we've seen on Apple. Is like, I mean, they were doing it great until they abandoned Jon Stewart because, well, their politics got in the way, and that's really disappointing. But before that part, they were still they're still doing it with For All Mankind. They're still paying Ronald D. Moore and stuff like that. But what they're doing more than anything is they're hosting the debates. They're hosting the arguments, and they're giving both sides the same due both sides have always given. But they're also not letting either side's angriest angry show up to the debate. And that's finally what goes to show that, yeah, it turns out most people are just normal. And there are also loud parties in every group that are a problem. And McCarthy was tyranny in response to communism, which is equally as bad.
And I don't necessarily, let me be clear. Let's clear the air right now. I don't necessarily blame McCarthy himself for wanting a such a staunch response. It's more the people that carried out
tyranny to win.
It's the people. Okay, it's the people, John. This is reality. It's the people who carry out the ideas that are the problem. McCarthy came up with a response because he saw communism as a threat that what he felt it was. Now, whether or not he wanted to destroy lives, that's on him personally. But for other people to carry out his idea, that's on the people. Just like Marx isn't responsible for communism, it's the people who perverted Marx's ideas.
Okay, guys.
Just like perverting Jesus's ideas, that's not the fault of Jesus having ideas. That's the fault of his followers messing it up.
Okay, so first I'm going to go with some of the very first cancel culture, you could argue,
right,
is the Romans deciding to cancel the Christians with lions in the arena. But, and then the reverse cancel culture, of course, or the reverse of that cancel culture being the Inquisition.
And the Catholic Church got power, exactly.
Now, what I'm going to say is this. I think communism and McCarthyism proves my point about politics. That it is not a spectrum, it is a ring.
Right.
Because communism went so far left that it basically became tyranny. And McCarthy went so far right, it also became tyranny.
Exactly. And even still, anybody is allowed to disagree with that. Daniel Larson says, but For All Mankind doesn't have the spacesuit with the gun on the moon meme failure. Oh, I don't know. I am only on season 1, and I just pulled up a poster like this that I had for it, so I thought that maybe by season 4 there was going to be moon conquest or, moon Vietnam, and based on the ending of episode 6, things are heating up and cranking up on a dramatic perspective. But yes, and that's the thing, and that's really my point overall, is it's not so much, we could blame ideologies back and forth, but ultimately we need to look at the actions that people took. And that's what this show is showing us. It's not saying that, oh, oh, you believe XYZ? You are therefore stupid, and this is why we're going to shame you for being dumb and believing that. No, it acknowledges that everybody has different beliefs and different backgrounds, and it simply shows that at the time period, this was the mindset that people had, and this is what people were encouraged to believe and push. It's simply calling out why we should never do that again. It's basically the reason why I posted on Twitter today, forget the past, repeat the future. Because that's what happens when we don't remember what happened in history. And remembering the bad parts of history, nobody is expecting anyone to shoulder blame. And anybody who is, you're not going to find any apologizing here. I apologize for nothing except my own actions. I've never done anything in history that is bad. I'm happy to talk about it and hold it to account because, well, if we forget our history, we are doomed to repeat it. And I would rather we move on from, these social issues with an enlightened perspective. That's why we do these discussions on this show. That's why we are not afraid to have the hard conversations. Because if we don't have them, we're just going to repeat the mistakes of the past. Mistakes that we see, on shows like For All Mankind.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what I think this show does. It does a very tasteful job of doing an alternate universe history, not trying to paint anybody as, oh, well, because of this happened. Like, that's what I absolutely love about it, is they're still staunchly against the Marxist-Lenin way of life. Like, they openly speak against it. And so it's definitely not, it's a great show for anyone to enjoy from any perspective. It's true to form. That's why Daniel Larson says that, yeah, Robert Meyer Burnett says it's a great platform to start a new Trek universe. He's 100% correct. It's basically Ronald D. Moore doing Star Trek in the past is really what For All Mankind is. And so it's kind of meta in that sense, if you think about it. Because Trek went on from 66 to 69, and the show starts in 69.
Yeah.
And if the point of divergence didn't take a huge effect until after the Russians landed on the moon, that means Star Trek TOS still exists in this universe. So, but we haven't seen anything or any references to it, though. So it might actually be planned as a jumping off point.
That's it. I think, look, down the road, I think this could absolutely have legs and could go somewhere really crazy. I don't know how long this show is going to be on and how many years we're going to cover in the space race, but this could get very good down the road.
I do.
I also kind of do, because I was looking up a timeline to figure out where exactly the point of divergence was, and the douchebags on the website decided to order the timeline starting in, well, a little bit further ahead than the 60s. We'll just say that.
Okay.
There's a 2-year gap between episode 5 and episode 6. So, I think by the end of season 1, we're gonna be like probably entering the 80s, because we're already in 74 by episode 6. But we'll see. I mean, you're only on episode 3. Like, you haven't even hit the parts that are just like the moments of, okay, this goes from.
Wait till you get to episode 34, brother. Oh my goodness! Like. Okay, I started episode 1 of the current season, and I was like, man, I'm not ready for this. And so I pressed pause and turned it off and started playing some video games, and then immediately was like, okay, now I'm ready. And once I turned it on, like, it was full tilt, like, didn't grab my phone, back in. I kind of want to re-binge the universe between every single weekly release. Like, Apple has yet to fail. It just also keeps taking such long breaks between all my favorite shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is by far one of my favorite shows ever, because it uses time lapse while also still maintaining storylines, while also like accurately skipping the BS. Like, the BS of life, which is, yeah, for 6 weeks they went back and tried to complete that one job, and now we get to watch the next episode, like where they complete the job, and I like that. And it just, oh man, every season is better and more evaluations on reality, while simultaneously just going back to like I think it's funny the whole like Marxist debate gets brought up, but like they show the difference between actual competitive market and what we created, because the way the series goes on, it's like if the nations were still competing like they used to be, imagine what the telecommunication companies were doing. Imagine what tech was trying to do. Imagine if Google wasn't just trying to create a search engine. What if it was trying to create the search engine before the Russians did the same thing? And it was
there's so many possibilities here, right?
But the show addresses them.
I know, right? Like,
and it's so fun.
I mean, you could even make a counter argument that because we are so focused on a space race, some technologies we have today don't get made because we're so busy working on other things.
But also, so many people are creating in order to be a part or a piece of the space race that, like, spoiler alert, Elon Musk shows up a lot earlier.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? Like, but look, hear me out on this. In our timeline here on Earth, I think if the space race didn't slow down, we would not have smartphones. Because the minds would be too busy, like the big brains would be too busy working on, like, I don't know, putting a colony on the moon and not going, hey, I want a portable computer in my, that I can walk around with.
Parker,
you see what I'm saying?
Who was it that wrote this one? What's his name again?
So Ronald D. Moore is the one who created and writes it. Yeah.
So Ronald D. Moore picked up on what October Sky was trying to put down. I don't know if you remember the movie, but October Sky was trying to point out that we were trying to make every single high school student, no matter their cultural background, a rocket scientist.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, that's all we're trying to do. It's like every single math, English, everything is to make kids the best scientists possible. And that's been the major goal of federal education in America for decades. And that's the part that I feel like Ronald D. Moore caught on, is that, like, that's what created Google. Like, what do you do if you can't afford to work for NASA? You go and you build computers for something else. And that's where this storyline shows that, like, those kids were still going to exist. But then also, if they actually, like, what if...
No, but, like, you see what my argument is, right?
No, you're right. No, and they do work into that, and I'm trying to do my best not to spoil anything. But, like, I really like how this show takes the debate even further and includes the other nations in the competition. Because, like, one of the things America did better than anybody is we closed the market to every other nation in the world. Like, even in the car market, the amount of cars that are sold pale in comparison to what America sells every year, because America literally capitalized the longest time. And that's where this show is like, well, because America was so focused on the space race, more nations did more. And now there's more competitors and more, like, foreign Googles. And then what does that competition look like? And that's, like, the really cool thing that we were talking about with Andor, is this show took the time to explode the universe from season 1. Like, full pyramid scheme all the way built out. It's so fun.
Yeah, guys, we got to plow through this. Hopefully for next week we can catch up, but we'll see how everyone paces, and if needs be, we can just do a discussion of where we're at in the series, and if it takes a little while to catch up, that's okay. But this is definitely one that we want to get on the bandwagon for. Also, it's just a good story. If you liked Ronald D. Moore's BSG, if you liked his work in DS9, I think you're gonna love this. If you liked his work in Caprica, I guess you might like this. I don't know. I couldn't. Caprica was more like crap-rica to me because I just could not get into it. Yeah, it was like, how do we take BSG and make it more political and boring? And then I say that, and yet I love For All Mankind, even though it's, well, anyway. No,
It's
For All,
political and boring.
it's also like based on it's historical fiction, and it's really
I like
cool.
political and boring.
I do too. I love House of Cards. I mean, Spacey was confirmed innocent now, so I don't know what to...
I mean, bro, I'm working my way through Blue Bloods right now, right? Like,
Okay.
you know, boring. I love myself a boring show every once in a while.
Oh, right. Sorry, I didn't know. So, really boring. Sorry, a title like Blue Bloods sounds like something, more exciting and with some kind of sophistication.
You'd think that.
Oh.
All right.
So, all right. Well, we are now down to the last 5 minutes. If you want to keep up on Corione's special announcement, you want to talk about that one more time, Corione, real quick? While we close out the show?
Just real quick, I have been nominated for a Cheer Award. The voting begins tomorrow. I'm really hoping I can count on you guys to come out and vote. And I'm going with the real steel. Let's give the littlest channel the biggest shot. And let's see if we can show everyone,
Yeah, if you want to get the flyer up there one more time, and then we can also...
let me get that popped in here.
We'll be posting this on a community post on our channel as soon as we've got all the information on where to participate in the voting, so you guys can help support Corione, which of course helps us support our channel here, because we want to continue to deliver you guys more honest, quality human content. That's what we'll promise here. We'll never be yes men for any network. We'll never pretend to like something that we don't, because we don't sell out. But you will always get our honest, straightforward opinions on pretty much everything. That's what we can promise. And while we might, do some AI art every now and then to contribute, just to use as a tool, we're never going to turn this into an AI network. So
that's it.
Speaking for too many of us, if I can phone it in with AI.
Well, then you won't have a slot on the Tuesday show. But,
LOL.
yes, the Cheer Awards, this is a big deal, and we'll definitely be keeping everybody informed on that, and as we go along. This Friday, I think we got a pretty good casual Friday discussion coming up. Probably I got to talk about some more of my time in the Coast Guard, but also how it relates to political hero worship, and why you should really think for yourself and not trust that just because somebody says all the things that you like to hear necessarily means that by their actions they're trustworthy. But we can get into that for the open forum discussion. And of course, whatever topics you guys want to bring to that show, that is that show that is there for you. The closest thing we do to call-ins is the comments section for now, and then as we start to grow, if we have to change that, we'll figure it out. But for now, bring the discussions, bring whatever you guys want to talk about. Come hang out and start your weekend off right with us on a Friday. Other than that, I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. Daniel Larson, Cosmic Vader, Nemesis of Eden, I know he's already gone. Sean, always good to see you too. Anybody else that I'm missing?
Orville Nation, Douchebag Kylo.
Douchebag Kylo. And yes, Stephanie Janicek, who popped in there on her way off to Slumberland. Thank you guys for showing up and giving your support, hitting that like, hitting that subscribe, hitting that everything. That's basically how we grow, and we are now more dependent on you guys, our subscribers, more than ever for this, because the algorithms keep changing, the game keeps changing, and we just want to deliver honest stuff. We don't want to inflate our numbers by other means. We want you guys that if you believe in us, please share us, but also if you think there's other friends out there that might appreciate us, you never know. Other than that, any last final words? We got a few seconds. Anybody? John,
If you're looking for a good book to read, check out The Three-Body Problem. It actually incited a little bit of a panic attack last night. I was like, whoo! I was like, whew,
Yeah.
whew.
That's a good book right there if it gets you on the edge of your
Existential
edge of your seat.
dread.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Oof.
Yep.
Uh,
Oh, Scogli, if you love that, I got to introduce you to the basilisk. The
Oh,
basilisk
I'm familiar
conjecture.
with that.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Alright.
mediocre, the Ryder Brothers. I'll see when I see you.
This has been a presentation of the Ryder Brothers Tuesday Night Live Show. The Ryder Brothers, restoring respect into discourse.